From time to time, Medicare issues a national coverage decision that covers a new technology only within clinical trials. Right now, this is in the news due to a proposed coverage of this type for Alzheimer amyloid drugs. In fact, the legal basis of this kind of Medicare coverage has been contested for years. It's pretty easy to understand the basics, but it's hard to find it anywhere. I'm Dr. Bruce Quinn, and I'm an expert on Medicare policy for new technology. Let's explain it so you can understand it. Medicare has a homepage for coverage with evidence development, or CED. This lists all the clinical trials currently supported by Medicare. There's also a long 2014 discussion of the rationale for this, but when you start to look closely, you find it's really quite unusual. Basically, Medicare says it can do coverage decisions only for patients inside of clinical trials based on Social Security Act Section 1862A1E. But this is written with some odd double negatives, and it's not at all typical or leading to easy interpretation. Generally, Medicare benefits are listed at Social Security Act 1861, and Medicare restrictions are listed at Social Security Act 1862. So at 1861, as you see here, we have a benefit for physician services. At 1862, A1A, we have a restriction. Medicare can pay for physician services, but only if they are necessary to diagnose or treat disease. Let's try another one. At 1861, DD, Medicare has a benefit for hospice services. And at 1862, A1C, we read that Medicare can only pay for hospice benefits necessary to palliate disease. One more. At 1861-00, there's a benefit for prostate cancer screening at a certain frequency. And at 1862-A1G, Medicare is prevented from paying for prostate cancer screening more often than the stated frequency. Okay, here's where it gets pretty weird. At 1862-A1A, we read that no payment may be made for research conducted pursuant to Section 1142, which is not reasonable and necessary to carry out the purpose of that section. So 1142 is the section of law creating AHRQ, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. So you can't pay for research at AHRQ, which is not reasonable and necessary for the purpose of AHRQ. You can't pay. No place does it say what you can pay for. So 1862A1A is a weird duck. Last year, in 2021, the General Counsel, or the Senior Attorney at Health and Human Services, wrote an advisory opinion that Medicare can't continue using CED as it is doing. Even taking CED as being possible, he says, it requires that research be supported by AHRQ. We read that yes, CMS says the research is supported by AHRQ because every CED decision at the agency has an email in the file saying that AHRQ, quote, supports it. The attorney, Mr. Charo, says that isn't reasonable. You should read the whole thing, but basically, support means meaningful financial support. It has to really be a bona fide research endeavor of the AHRQ and its staff and funding for CMS to participate in payments. Well, CED is marching right along because the new Biden administration deleted that legal advisory opinion. However, I provide a link to it, and it's still worth reading. So Medicare believes that the sort of backward double negative reference to HRQ research allows it to make CED coverage decisions. I should mention another logic has also been put forward. This is a logic that a particular service is not reasonable and necessary if provided directly to patients, but it becomes reasonable and necessary for the patient if it's in a clinical trial. That doesn't really make sense to me. Let's say 50 patients are going to get drug X. Medicare says that's not reasonable and necessary. But if you take another 50 patients over there in another building and I put them on placebo, then drug X becomes reasonable and necessary for the first 50 patients about to get the drug. Iffy. One path forward would be for Congress to write a benefit at 1861, where the benefits are, and say there is a benefit for covering research and clinical trials and writing down when and how this can be done. Right now, Congress has only told Medicare what it can't pay for, and that really leaves a lot of open questions and difference of opinion, and implementation is argumentative and messy. I hope this was helpful. and thanks for listening.